I'm Dr. Lynn Sandra Kahn, and I have a warning about episodes 17 through 22. You may be triggered by our conversations regarding the failures of family law, family court, foster care, medical kidnapping, and parental alienation. Please, if you have been caught up in the child welfare system, find your support group. You are not alone. The system is broken and abusive. Two places to start are the website rachelbruno.com, as we discuss in episode 17, and on Facebook, the page Family Forward Project with Connie Reguli, as we discuss in episode 19. Please find your support group. You are not alone. Viewer discretion advised. Welcome to my podcast, The Government Mechanic. I am your host, Dr. Lynn Sandra Kahn, and I am the Government Mechanic. This is episode 20, and my special guest is Connie Reguli, who has been working in the area of reforming our child welfare systems for 30 years. She is a family lawyer, and more than that, she has built a network of resources and guidelines for families who've been caught up in the horror of family court and foster care. Connie from Tennessee, are you in Tennessee?
I am in Tennessee today. Thank you. And it's so good to see you again. Thank you, Dr. Kahn.
Yes, ma'am. I really didn't know about these issues till I was campaigning in Iowa in 2016. And that's when I first heard about it. And I was shocked. And then I heard about it in Iowa, went back to upstate New York, was invited to go back to Iowa and meet with people in 4 different towns who had all had their kids taken by, or grandkids taken by Child Protective Services. And most of them were just horrible, horrible results. I have a picture of you and me in the Iowa State Capitol in Des Moines in October of 2017. I think you were making a presentation and I got to attend. And maybe you were working on legislation back then, I don't know. But I do know that you have been persistent and courageous about these issues since before 2017. So let me ask you the first question. You were a successful family lawyer with a great practice, and you shifted your attention to child welfare and foster care and reforming these systems. What motivated you to
Yeah.
focus on that?
Yeah, thank you, Lynn, and thank you for the great introduction. And I have worked so hard for 15 years now in trying to educate people and expose what's going on. But, first of all, I became a lawyer late in life. That's one of the important things for people to understand. I was already 42 years old when I got my law license. It was not a first career for me. And
Mm,
so I came into the practice of law with a little bit different perspective. My family had been in business, we'd been in the restaurant business, a very nice, formal business. And
mm,
I really interacted with a lot of people. And I found that, I really liked people. I went into law because I believed I was smart, I was intelligent, I was a good advocate, and I was organized. So, as I looked at the skills that I thought I was bringing into the practice of law, my idea and my concept was I would be able to help people. That's what I wanted to do. And so I started in family law. I was able to make good presentations. I was very organized. I was always prepared. I studied the law, I studied evidence. And then I found that no matter how hard I worked, I was representing families in a very chaotic court system, which was either the family court system or the dependency court, which here in Tennessee is the juvenile court. And I just could not understand why I was having so many obstacles and meeting so many obstacles with trying to represent persons in this system. So that is when I began to really study the system. So I looked at judges, I started studying judges, I started studying CPS, I looked at the funding, I looked at the laws, I looked at the rules, and I really started thinking to myself, like, why would the government want to take children from families' homes over such minor issues and basically hold those children hostage as government captives with strangers? Why would they do that? That's what led me to start really digging in to what is the funding that is behind this and what do we need to know about the funding systems. That's when I found that our federal tax dollars put a price tag on every child's head, and that's why they end up in the state's custody.
I was astonished to realize that foster care in America is a for profit industry. There's billions of dollars that go out to the states, and they only get their hands on it when they take kids away from their parents.
Yeah, that's correct. So for people who are new to looking at this topic, and I know you've covered a lot of great topics where you look at how is the government just interfering with professions and industry, et cetera. But under the Title IV-E funding, the state receives a check for every child they remove from a home. And it's a very interesting funding mechanism. It is a dollar for dollar match, which means a dollar of federal money, a dollar of state money. It is
Mm.
a use it or lose it scheme. So if you don't use the money you've sought to be appropriated, then you're going to lose it. It is never subject to sequester. So all these arguments you hear about government shutdown, it is never subject to government shutdown. And finally, if you start looking at the state's individual budgets, it makes up about 40% of the state's operating budget, which means that as these organizations grow, these state bureaucracies are now like, Tennessee is 4,000 employees. And that's not counting a single foster parent. That's not counting a single counselor or therapeutic interventionist. That is just the administrative process of dealing with these children. So they have to have that money, and then they privatize foster care. So now we have for profit companies who are dependent upon that money. In Tennessee, the biggest ones are Youth Villages and Omni, but all across the country, we have the Lutheran Social Services, we have Eckerd Social Services. They are huge, huge companies. And so we have gotten so tied up and so knotted up in the for-profit industry of institutionalizing children that we're having a hard time unwinding this huge ball of knots.
And even within that system, so I hear different numbers between 350,000 and 600,000 kids are in foster care every year. It changes a
Yeah.
little, not much.
Hmm.
And
Well,
of those kids, 33,000 go missing every year, according to the U.S. Marshal Service. What's that about?
yeah. So I'm glad you brought up the numbers of children because some people say, and they think if they've never looked into this, they think, well, if somebody had their child removed, their child needs to be protected from an abusive parent. So, first of all, we know that 85% of the children are removed under what's called neglect, which includes substance abuse, but only about 15% of the children removed are removed because of physical or sexual abuse. And so every year there are reports made by a federal agency who collect their data from every single state, and they're called AFCARS reports, and it gives you a whole series of numbers. It gives you all kinds of numbers. Now, of course, you always know, everybody must know, must realize when you look at studies and statistics, sometimes it's garbage in, garbage out, right? If you don't get the right data, you're not going to have the right statistics. So we have to assume the states are properly reporting. And if you look at those national numbers, every year about 250,000 children are removed from their home. Half of those children are 7 and under. The average time in state's custody is 2 years, and only about 50% of the children are reported as going home. So we know we have a massive number of children that are being removed from their home. And right now, all across America, everyone is talking about the unaccompanied minor children. Now, the unaccompanied children
Mm.
go through a different federal agency. They go through the Office of Refugee Resettlement. But everybody right now is like, okay, under the Biden administration, 100,000 children were coming through annually over the past 4 years. And that's about 400,000. But over that same 4 year period, almost 900,000 children were removed from their home of origin. So we got this report about a year and a half ago, which was a study that had been completed by the Federal Marshal Service and NCMEC, which is the National Center for Exploited and Missing Children. And they did a report on the children that were missing. And they found annually 33,000 children were missing, unaccounted for. Now, some of those are runaways, but some of them were never recovered. But the same report also says that 70% of the children who are sex trafficked are coming from foster care. So this is tragic. This is just a tragic result. There has been a narrative that has been pushed for the past 20 years that says that if a child is in foster care, a parent is abusive, and this new family is going to be a better family for them. You don't even know who those people are. You don't know who foster parents are. Once they adopt a child, nobody follows up with them. Nobody does any studies on those children to see if they're in quote unquote better homes. And yet, the long term statistics reveal that if a child has been in foster care, they're more likely to be in prison, more likely to not complete their education, more likely to be homeless, more likely to have their own children taken, more likely to have unstable employment and be homeless. So the long term results are clear, and nobody wants to admit it. And they all just brush it off every time they see a report that says there's all this dysfunction. The next thing you know is the agencies are saying, oh, we're trying so hard, we're working so hard, we just need more money.
These stories and actually the last 3 episodes they kind of get dark. I mean, it is depressing and it is horrific in a lot of ways. Hard to believe this is happening in America. But let's turn to some solutions because you have been bringing regular people to Washington, D.C. to lobby for change. So I just wanted to know about your efforts to lobby for systemic change.
Mhm. Yes. So the huge overreaching law that we're dealing with was passed in 1974, and it's called CAPTA, CAPTA, the Child Abuse Prevention and Treatment Act. This was the first law that really started pushing the funds out to the states. That law has been reauthorized a couple of times. The most recent reauthorization was 2010. So it came up for reauthorization again, and they tried to get it reauthorized by basically rubber stamping what had been done over the past 30 years, and it did not pass. And so as of September 2023, that law has technically expired. And most people do not know this. And
Mm.
what has happened is that Congress and the Senate have a resolution to continue to fund it until it can be reauthorized. So, one of our goals, so the Family Forward Project is a host of families all over the US who have been through this, who want to learn, who want to help other people. And we are lobbying for changes. And I credit our efforts of blocking the reauthorization of
Mm.
CAPTA in 2022 because we've been up there, and I believe you went up there to Washington as well. And we went up there, we go in the offices. We always take an affected family. And I know you've talked to Ms. Templeton, Bailey Templeton, and Rachel Bruno. They go up there to Washington. Terry LaPointe goes to Washington. And we are constantly educating them on the problems. So, right now, our current push is for a family advocate bill.
Mm.
We were able to get a bill introduced last year. However, because it was too late in the year and it was such a huge election year, we were not able to get it passed. So we just went up again in January and had conversations again with our sponsor and with several other um, members of Congress and a few Congress people to help us get that bill. And here's the purpose: the purpose is if we can put an advocate in place early in the case and just help the parents understand the process, understand what's going on. Ultimately, we want better, stronger families. We're not advocating for abuse. We're not advocating for, hiding any type of sexual abuse or physical abuse of children. But 85% of these kids are not abused.
Yeah. And the outcomes when they are removed from the home are horrible. I mean, they're not good outcomes when kids go into foster care.
They are not good outcomes. And the other thing that I'm grateful of is I have in my efforts and just my diligence, one of my prayers is that the narrative and the chatter would rise to another level. I mean, I've been talking to parents for years and getting their story out, but I wanted to make sure that that chatter was going up to the next level, going up and hearing professionals talk about it, hearing college instructors talk about it. And that has finally occurred. There are a few books that have come out that really tell this story. And Dorothy Roberts has written a couple books. Daniel Hatcher has written a couple books. There's a book called Taking Children by Lauren Briggs that really just talks about America's horrible history of the way we have treated children and in the institutionalization of them. We cannot, as a nation, not only did we institutionalize children and treat them badly and separate them from their parents, we've now turned them into an industry. And
Yeah.
the Poverty Industry, a book by Daniel Hatcher, as well as Injustice Inc., which talks about the industry of monetizing our children, is has become a reality now. And that is where we have to expose that, and we need people to help us. And it's not just in CPS, it's in medical care, it's in education, it's in the food, right? The way how children have been monetized with food. And now every parent struggling with social media, and every kid over 4 years old wants the parents to buy them download apps that they pay for. So the monetization of our children has become huge. And as Americans, we must put the brakes on that. We must, as parents and community leaders, and as just people who want better, stronger families, need to understand that we need to pull back the layers on putting the dollar sign on our kids' head.
Beautifully said. Perfect. All right. In closing, is there anything you want to say to parents who might be caught up in this family court, foster care, child welfare system, child protective services? What do you want to say? What advice do you have?
Yeah. So first of all, I'll say if not you, If it hasn't touched your life, I promised you within 3 degrees of separation, somebody has been touched. It may be your hairdresser's cousin. It may be somebody in the grocery line, that there's just people all around you who've been touched by this, because we just know there are thousands of children who are being reported and taken. So that's why everybody should take this serious. It's just spreading and spreading and spreading. So, one of the things that the Family Forward Project is doing is training, and I'm training advocates, but I've also developed this training that parents can watch as well. Because I have a training, for instance, I call it the politics and players of CPS, where they can learn about who are all these people that are participating. I have another one about the trauma drama, and it talks about the history of CPS. So you'll understand where this comes from. I have other just like real serious technical trainings, such as what it looks like in the courtroom, authenticating records, understanding disability rights. So you have to immediately begin to incorporate yourself into other support groups and get trained yourself so that you can be conversant. So many of the attorneys that cover this subject are incompetent or just lazy, or they just feel beaten down, like they can't beat the system, because that's the process that I went through. And so the parent has got to be educated enough to be able to help their attorney help them, or, and sometimes, I hate to say, but be prepared to represent yourself at some level.
Yeah. I think people that get caught up in the system are astonished to find out that they're going to end up in family court with no rights, no lawyer, and no supports. So your resources are incredible. Is there a final comment that you want to make? And then I'll close out a little bit.
Mhm. Yeah, so just Connie Reguli, Reguli. I'm the only Connie Reguli out there. You can find me on all the social media platforms under my name, and also under, I do have a YouTube channel, Facebook. Our group on Facebook is the Family Forward Project. It is a public group. You can get yourself in there right away. I do some TikTok under Family Forward. I also have a YouTube, separate YouTube channel called Family Forward, which is our training. And so, yeah, so get engaged, and, Instagram, TikTok, X. I try to make comments all the time in different platforms so we can keep our voice being heard.
And you've done an incredible job bringing together all those resources for more than just for people's voices to be heard, but to create a network that supports these families in crisis, which is extraordinary because it's national and in some ways international. And it's very impressive. And I thank you for taking time to be on this episode. Thank you very much.